Welcome to the 159th episode of the Reading and Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Rutherford. Stay tuned for my interview with Lucy Burdette, author of the Key West food critic mystery novels. This interview was conducted at the Crime Bait Conference in Boston, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for the interview. The Reading and Writing Podcast is sponsored by the book-loving nerds at Riffle. Riffle is an online book community that connects readers with authors and books that they'll love. Readers use Riffle to find the next book that they want to read. And authors use Riffle to make their books stand out and drive sales. Join the Riffle community today at rifflebooks.com. That's rifflebooks.com. And look for the link in the show notes as well. Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is Lucy Burdette, who writes the Key West Food Critic Mystery Series. The latest novel in the series is Top Chef. Lucy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for asking me.
Sure. Well, for those listeners who haven't read Top Chef yet, how would you describe the novel?
It's a cozy mystery. It takes place in Key West, which is not always cozy. But it's an amateur sleuth, Haley Snow, who is a food critic and finds herself solving murders when the people she cares about are implicated.
Great. Well, you just mentioned Haley Snow is your protagonist in Sleuth. Do you remember, was it her character who came to you first, or was it the fact that you wanted to write a Key West food critic and then you kind of came up with Haley's character?
Well, everything fell together. I wrote two other mystery series under my own name, Roberta Islam, and then I heard that NAL was looking for an amateur sleuth character who was a food critic. And I can do food. My husband likes to joke that my maiden name stands for "is stomach" in German, and he's given my family a motto, which is large lunch followed by a restful nap. So food is very interesting to me, and we were visiting Key West, which is such a wonderful town full of quirky people and tropical weather and a lot of artistic types. So I pitched the story of the food critic in Key West, and they thought it was a good idea. So. Great.
And do you live in Key West?
I'm lucky enough to be there half the year.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't
the
like
cold half of the year?
The cold half, the half where you had that 3 feet of snow.
Exactly.
I was in Key West. Yeah.
Well, since you're writing a food mystery, I have to ask, do you have a favorite cuisine or a recipe?
I like home-style food. So, for instance, if I go in a restaurant and there's macaroni and cheese on the menu, that's what I order. So, I'll eat a lot of things, nothing with tentacles or that hasn't been cooked. No squiggly things.
Yes. So do you find yourself, when you're writing these, do you find yourself doing a fair amount of research in terms of food and food preparation, etc.?
Well, the research is tough because we have to go out to eat.
Oh,
so
that's
she's
tough.
a restaurant critic. All the restaurants in the series are real. They're real places in Key West, unless I have killed someone off. In that case, I make it up. I'm working on the 5th book in the series now, and it's about a chef who is just opening a restaurant in Key West, and I know there's going to be a lot of trouble in that restaurant, so I'm not going to make it real. But the other thing that I'm doing is talking to chefs and reading a lot of food memoirs and food criticism. It's all fun to me.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. And do you watch a lot of the food reality shows?
No?
I
should. But I don't like reality TV, even though I wrote this book, Top Chef, about a reality TV contest. It's just not my thing.
Not your thing?
No.
Yeah. Well, prior to your Key West food critic mysteries, you wrote a series of mysteries featuring an advice columnist, Dr. Rebecca Butterman. Do you plan to do any more of those novels or mysteries?
I loved writing those books because the character was a psychologist, which is my training also, and she had her practice in New Haven, Connecticut, right in the building where my practice used to be. So I really knew her world, and I loved the character, and unfortunately, the books didn't sell as well, and that is the bottom line in this climate is either they sell or they don't, and if they don't, then you could write more, but you might have to publish them yourselves. Although, who knows with the ebooks the way they are, things are having a second life that people thought were dead. So
Right.
I would love to write more, but there's no plans for that now.
Right. Well, what was the path to publication like for you when you sold your first novel?
I feel like this was back in the dark ages, but it wasn't that long ago. But it was before the email queries were alive the way they are today. So what you did was you did your research, you wrote your query out, you typed it out, you printed it, and you sent it through the snail mail, and then you would wait, and however many months later. So over about a year, I'd probably heard no's from 30 or so agents. It happens a lot more quickly now, which is good news and bad.
Yeah.
And then I had heard about an event called Meet the Agents in New York. It was a women's writers group that was holding this. So I went in, and there were about 150 frantic, unpublished writers and maybe 8 agents. And after they explained what they were interested in...
Good setting for a mystery novel.
Yeah, I'll say. So they told what they were interested in, and then you had to rush to the stage to get in line, where you had 3 minutes to pitch your book. So I told you, food, I know about rushing to table. I come from a big family, and I know how to get to the front of the line. So I rushed up there. There was only one woman interested in mysteries. She said, sure, send me the manuscript. And then 3 weeks later, another agent called who had been through her office, saw the book, and said, I'd like to take a look at this. So she's been my agent. So it's a combination of dumb luck and really keeping at it and polishing the manuscript.
And what originally got you interested in writing mysteries? You obviously have a training, as you said, as a psychologist. Was writing something you had always done for fun? And Never intended to be a writer.
I read a lot of mysteries, Nancy Drew and Cherry Ames and everything. I still read a lot of mysteries, but I call it a midlife crisis. It just, one day, actually it was on account of bad golf. I was spending a lot of time learning how to play golf and trying to think, what can I make out of this? And what evolved was the character in my first series, which is a neurotic lady golfer.
and so you were playing golf, and you just decided, I'm going to try to write a mystery, or what was that?
Yeah, I was writing some articles about the psychology of golf, because that's what really tripped me up, was getting too much in my head and thinking how badly I wanted to kill this ball and beat this opponent, which got me thinking about how can professional golfers handle all that, or am I just such a nutcase? But those articles were hard to sell. So then the idea of a mystery set in this world came to mind, and it was an awful lot of fun. I had, played with some professional golfers and played golf all over the United States. It was a blast.
Great. And so what is your writing process like when you start thinking about and then working on a mystery? Do you plot it out completely ahead of time?
No, I used to plot more than I do. I have a pretty fast turnaround, so and plotting is the hardest thing for me. So I'm kind of always trying something new to figure out what's the least pain In this case, it's starting with the character and thinking about what will happen in the character's life over the course of this book, and then fitting the plot in around it.
Great. Well, given your success at writing thus far, what advice would you have for aspiring writers who may be listening, in terms of what they can do to get their own stories published?
Well, starting out, I had never had any training in writing other than professional writing. So I took whatever classes I could find. I think people get the idea that sure they could write a book. Why shouldn't they be able to write a book? And it's really a lot of skill that you have to learn and practice. So I took classes and I hired an outside editor, which was like taking a one-on-one class. I learned an awful lot. And as I mentioned before, how fast things happen now with the internet. Don't rush to send something out. You don't have that many opportunities to get in front of someone and show them what you can do. So if you send in a manuscript that's rough and has a little gem of an idea but isn't well polished, you're going to blow it. So I think slow down, learn the craft, and try to have fun. And support. You need pals.
That's great. Well, that's interesting that you worked with a freelance editor. What was that process like?
It was really fantastic. I had already had 2 books published, the first 2 in the golf series, when a friend was telling me about how helpful this person was. So I hired her, and I don't know whether she had the manuscript for about 6 weeks, and she sent back 40 single-spaced pages of commentary. Yeah, I had to go lie down.
Was this on your 3rd novel?
On my 3rd
Wow.
novel. So I had to go lie down before I could really take it in. But it was like a tutorial that was, focused on me. It was really wonderful.
That must have been a great opportunity to learn.
Yeah, if you could take the heat.
Yeah. So, what books or authors have you read lately that you would recommend that you enjoyed, either nonfiction or fiction?
Well, I blog with 2 groups of women. One of them is the Jungle Red Writers, and Julia Spencer Fleming has a new book out. It's in her series about an Episcopalian priest and a small-town police chief set in the Adirondacks. It's called Through the Evil Days, and it's an amazing, amazing book. I love the series, but this one is really strong. I mean, I could go on and on. Another of my buddies in New England is Barbara Ross, and she has a new book in her clam bake series called Clammed Up, and it's for a cozy mystery. It's very well done. So those are 2 I can think of.
That's great. So what are you working on now?
I'm working on this 5th book. It's not as far along as it should be. But it's about this restaurant, a chef from New York City who's moved a franchise down to Key West and immediately feels that someone is sabotaging her. So at this point, my character, Haley Snow, is starting to get a little reputation as a little Jessica Fletcher, the Jessica Fletcher of Key West. So she calls her in and asks her, could you help me to kind of look at things and see if you see what's happening.
Great. And where can people find you online if they're interested?
Too much online. They can find me, my website is lucyburdette.com, Burdette. I tweet at Lucy Burdette, Facebook Lucy Burdette, and 2 blogs, Jungle Red Writers, and with a group of cozy culinary writers, Mystery Lover's Kitchen, and that's a recipe every day.
That's great. Yeah. Well, again, we've been speaking with Lucy Burdette. She writes the Key West Food Critic Mysteries and the latest book in the series is Top Chef, which is out now, so grab a copy. And thanks for doing this interview.
Thanks for asking me.
Okay.